Michael, I love understanding why people believe the way they do about politics, conspiracy theories, certainly religion. How can you try to generalize from these totally different categories to get at the root cause of why we believe things?
Well, my first book was Why People Believe Weird Things. So with the believing brain, I wanted to pull back and go, okay, it's one thing for us to understand the weird stuff. We just go, oh, the people, they're not educated or their thinking is wrong. But what I want to know now is why people believe anything.
Yeah.
Because it actually turns out it's all the same process, that we form beliefs through finding patterns that connect the dots, that make some kind of causal sense of the world, and that our brains are really evolved to be these like pattern seeking machines. I call it a belief engine. The first process is patternicity, the tendency to find meaningful patterns in random noise. In fact, the research shows that it's almost impossible not to find some pattern. You show subjects randomness, they can't see randomness. They always find patterns. So I got to thinking, why would that be? And the answer is because that's the key to survival, is connecting the dots, connecting A to B. So you're a hominid on the plains of Africa 3.5 million years ago, and you hear a rustle in the grass. Is it a dangerous predator, or is it just the wind? Well, if you think it's a dangerous predator, it turns out it's just the wind. You've made a type 1 error, a false positive. But no harm. You're a little more vigilant and cautious. But if you think the rustle in the grass is just the wind, it turns out it's a dangerous predator.
Your genes don't get passed on.
Your lunch, right? And so we're the descendants of those more likely to make one kind of mistake than the other kind of mistake. The kind of mistake that just assumes everything's real, just in case it is. Mm-hmm. So that's superstition, that's magical thinking. But in fact, it's all thinking. And until science developed a few centuries ago, there was no reliable method to tell the difference between true patterns and false patterns. We just had our instincts and our intuitions and our emotions. So that got me thinking about, well, politics, that's kind of a belief, and economic ideologies, that's a belief. And so it's not just the weird stuff, it's everything is subject to all these cognitive biases and these patternicity tendencies and that sort of thing. So that was the first part. Then I got to think, well, but what about God and the afterlife and ghosts? And, those are sort of a derivative of patterns that I call agenticity, the tendency to sort of impute into those patterns intentional agents. It's not just the wind. What's the difference between the wind and a dangerous predator? A dangerous predator intends to eat me. Right? It's an agent. It's an intentional agent. It has intention, and this doesn't sound good to me, right? So it behooves our brains to not just find patterns, but actually to impute to them agency. And then from there, you're off and running. There's hidden conspiracies, there's ghosts, there's gods, angels, demons, the whole lot. Even the idea that there's, some sort of higher force or power, or somebody will save us. We have a social problem. Somebody should do something. And it's hard for us to think, well, we're the somebody, we're the government. It's us. We always think, well, there's somebody out there that should take care of this for us. That's just our natural inclination.
Now, many of these belief systems have self-consistent things that relate to. So right-wing politics has very specific things that are all associated together that don't have to be logically associated together. And we see that in religion as well. So how did these different patterns get cohered together so that you sort of, if you buy the system, you have to buy the whole thing?
Right, particularly with politics, is like if I know your stance on abortion, right, I can pretty much predict everything else that you believe politically and economically, who you're going to vote for in the next election and so on. It's kind of eerie. I don't have to know anything about you personally other than just one thing. And then I can, okay, why is that? Well, because we're tribal. We're a social primate species. We're very tribal. We like to convey a signal to our fellow tribe members. I'm consistent, you can count on me, I'm reliable, I'm a good trusting friend. And so when I'm in need, you should help me, and when you're in need, I should help you, and be consistent about it. So ideologies and beliefs are just a subset of that. Because think about how conservatives critique liberals. You're a wishy-washy, mamby-pamby flip-flopper.
Yeah.
We can't count on you, right? So it's like that's kind of emblematic of that ancient tribal instinct.
And is that biologically selected for it through the same process, or that's just something that has become cultural?
Well, it's driven culturally by specific issues, but the deeper emotion of wanting to be considered consistent, reliable, you can count on me, I'm not a flip-flopper, I'm a good, reliable member of the tribe, that's just basic evolutionary instincts about our propensity to want to be part of a group.
And how would that breed selectivity, though? I can understand how patternicity works and agenticity because I've now had a more likely capacity to survive and pass my genes on. But how about the tribal element? Would I be more conducive to be a good mate?
Well, in a way, you would be, because our moral emotions evolved to be pro-social and altruistic and nice and cooperative within our group, and to be tribal, xenophobic, and very skeptical and cautious about people in other groups. Why? Because other groups are actually dangerous. That is, if you encounter a complete stranger out in a hunter-gatherer world in a strange pathway, you shouldn't just reach out and shake his hand and say, "Hi, brother, nice to know you. How's it going?" No, this could get you killed, right? So trust with verification, right? That's the policy of hunter-gatherer groups. So we'll throw a potlatch and see how it goes, but be very careful. The food might be poison, right? We have to be so we're always xenophobic about other groups, nice to within our in-group members. So if you're consistent, if your beliefs match mine, like religious rituals, it doesn't matter what the rituals are. The culture will tell you what the ritual is. But what we're after is, why would you want to do rituals in the first place? And the answer is because if I see you every Sunday in church or on Friday and you don't eat meat and you wear the yarmulke, whatever, I know I can count on you.
Yeah.
And that you're not just going to bail on us, right? And so that would be selected for. That is, you're more likely to survive if you're a good group member, because we're a social species. It's hard. You would have a hard time surviving on your own. Any of us would. We need each other. We're, as Aristotle said, we're a social, political animal.
And so we have patternicity, agenticity, and tribalism. Is there any other key element in the deep structure of belief systems?
Well, dopamine is a biochemical drug that in our brains that basically makes those connections and reinforces things that we want more of. It's involved with learning, with positive things, with drug addiction, with love. There's sort of a biochemistry that drives all this, that is an evolved hormone, really, or neurochemical transmitter substance to make those deep connections in our brain. The actual neural networks, when they get reinforced and we get into patterns of thought and patterns of behavior, that comes right down to dopamine receptors increasing.
So we have these core concepts of patternicity, agenticity, tribalism, reinforced by the biological neurochemistry. It sounds like our beliefs are pretty much cemented. How easy is it for an individual to break out of those systems?
Very difficult to change your mind, to break a belief system once it's encoded in your brain. Very, very difficult. It's not impossible. Every once in a while, somebody will change political parties. Every once in a while, some religious leader will change religions or announce that they're not religious at all. But it's so rare, that makes the news. I mean, if a senator changes parties, that is front page. That almost never happens, right? And because you'd be considered a traitor to your tribe, your group. And that's why senators always vote, even the Supreme Court, who supposedly should be above all this, belief-dependent realism, as I call it, and all the cognitive biases. And no, they're not. They're split. They're very consistent. It's very disturbing. And the older I get, the more, I guess, cynical I become about politics, economics, ideologies. It's like, dang, this is just really basic tribalism, basic neurochemistry, brain chemistry. It's like, darn. I thought we were rational, enlightened creatures. I don't think so. Not as much as we'd like to believe.